All right. Good morning, everybody. Thanks for joining me. If you got your questions, go ahead and post them. It's either going to be below the video if you're on a mobile device. If you're on a desktop, laptop, computer, something like that, it's going to be to the right of the video. So I do apologize if there's a little bit of background noise. My neighbor always decides to mow the yard during office hours for some reason. So I apologize if there's a little bit of like weed whacker noise back there, but we'll go ahead and get started. I always start with questions that were asked up to an hour before. So I'll be starting here with Scott R asking about the move. So if you post your question, so it said first name and then L, if you posted questions, Kevin, Scott R. All right. So Scott R is on here. So, all right, cool. So Scott R says, can you go through the move again? I think I'm bending away from the target to start the downswing. Yeah, so that's kind of what I talked about in a previous office hours highlight, where that's probably the biggest mistake that I see is people try to shallow the club by bending like this. And that's not really what we want to do. That's going to cause you to chunk the ball and have all kinds of issues. We want to make sure it's going to be hard to open up the body too, because that puts your hips kind of in a position kind of bumped out that makes it difficult to rotate. So there's all kinds of reasons why we don't want to do that. But a lot of times that's people's natural inclination to try to get this club shallowed out. That's why we talk about turning the doorknob, and that's why we talk about twisting the handle to square up the face. So that's basically what the move is. The move is getting this club shallowed out. So getting this club to flatten out. We'll talk about how we want to do that here in a second. And then it's also squaring up this face as soon as possible. So basically, by the time we get right here, we want to have it. Now I'm exaggerating, but this is what you want to do in the move is you want to exaggerate as much as you can. So basically, we want to shallow out this club as much as we can. And we want to basically close this face, twist this handle as much as we possibly can, and basically just hit big old smother hooks out there that start to the right and curve to the left. That's what we want to get to in the move. And then once we get to where we're getting that, and our contact's good, all that, then we'll just ease off of it to get a nice little draw. And believe me, a draw is going to be the best ball flight for, I would say, 99% of people. The reasoning is, I see a lot of people that are wanting to hit fades now, and that's because we're seeing a lot of players on tour like Brooks Koepka, Dustin Johnson, and guys like that are hitting fades. Well, they're hitting fades because they have lots and lots of power, and it kind of helps them come in a little bit softer. A fade is not going to be a good play for most people, like is a typical shot. Now, if you already have a fade and that's your go-to shot, that's completely fine. But if you hit a nice draw right now and you're trying to get to where a fade is your go-to shot, I would stick with your draw because it's going to be a much more powerful ball flight. The reasoning is that when you hit a draw, the face is closed to your path. When the face is closed to your path, it de-lofts the face. A fade does the opposite. A fade is open to your path, which adds loft. So to compensate for that, you would have to get more forward shaftling, which for most people is a difficult thing to do. So that's why a lot of times, if you've ever worked on hitting draws and fades and things like that, that's why a lot of times your fades do not go as far and they go higher. They're kind of, usually when people hit fades, when I see people hit fades, is they're typically kind of weak, high, kind of fluttering shots. And that draw is going to be a more powerful ball flight. So that's really what the move is all about, to get you to where you can hit a nice, powerful draw. So the way that we want to do that is we want to shallow out the club. Now, the problem that I see with a lot of people is what they do is they shallow out the club, they go like this. So they're here, right? And then they go like this. Well, you can see that shallows out the club, but that's not the way we want to do it. That puts me in this kind of position right here. And typically what I'm going to do is I'm going to throw my arms in front of the body to get the club to the golf ball, or I'm just going to block. If I'm able to get to the golf ball, I'm going to block the ball a mile out to the right, or I'm going to chunk it. It's just going to lead to a lot of issues there. The way that we want to get this club shallowed out is not by going like this. We want to get the club like this. That's that turning of the doorknob that we talk about. So if you're a right-handed golfer, you're turning the doorknob to the right with both arms. That's the feeling that you're having, is you're turning the doorknob to the right. So that's this right here. The way you kind of want to think about it And I apologize, the neighbor is like edging his lawn. So, but the way you kind of want to think about it is try to get this club perpendicular to your spine. If you see, if I have it like this and I go like that, my club's not getting perpendicular to my spine. It's the same relationship. So I need to twist the doorknob to get the club perpendicular to my spine. The next piece is turning the handle. So that's this motion here. So both of those together is what you're doing. So you can see here, shallowing and twisting the face. I'll do it from this angle. Shallowing and twisting the face. Now from here, I can really open up. Into the golf ball, get this club working in to out, have this face closed, and I can get some awesome smothered hooks doing that. So that's really what the move is. That's what it's all about. That's what's getting you to where you're hitting. You're going to go out there and you're going to hit smothered hooks. That's what you're going to be trying to do. And you want them to start to the right and curve to the left. What we're not trying to do is going out there to hit perfect shots. Initially, you need to go to the extreme and get those smothered hooks that start to the right, curve to the left for a right-handed golfer. At the end of the move, that's when you ease off of it to get it to where it's a nice little draw. It's so much faster to improve if you really exaggerate things. If you just try to do the move and then just try to get like a little perfect little ball flight, you're always going to be fighting to try to get that all the time. Whereas if you really go to the extreme and get these really compressed smothered hooks, I mean, when you start hitting those smothered hooks, those low scream-in hooks that start to the right and curve to the left, the compression that you're going to feel on the face, it's going to feel awesome. I'm telling you, it's going to feel really good. So once you kind of get that feeling, then it's just easy to ease off of that a little bit to get to where you want to go. So that way you're always around where you want to be. You're never constantly fighting, trying to get there. You're constantly coming down steep. You're going to get to where you're over shallowing it. You're over closing the face. And then all you have to do is ease off it. So that's why I recommend work through the move, get the reps in, get the smothered hooks. Don't be satisfied with little draws. They're going to look great in the beginning, but if you don't stick with it and get the smothered hooks, you're gonna be fighting trying to get that nice shot all the time. Whereas if you go all the way, get it to where you're overdoing it, then you ease off of it, then you're going to be there much more easily. All right, so Giles or Gills B, I apologize, Gillis. I apologize if I'm mispronouncing your name there, but Ash, should we still use forward shaft lane for an approach shot to the green? If yes, how do we obtain backspin? Yes, absolutely. You want to use backspin. Basically, all your shots or you want to use forward shaft lean. Basically, all your shots. Even with the driver, there's usually not a lot of forward shaft lean, but the hands are really in the same position. It's just the ball position's a little bit more forward, so you don't see a lot of forward shaft lean there. Your tour player is going to be like 1 degree of forward shaft lean. But yes, especially with wedges, you want to have forward shaft lean. You get backspin because of the loft of the club. You're going to get, the loft dictates how much backspin you have, or that's a big part of it. So your loft, and then where you strike it on the face and how cleanly you strike it on the face. So if you're not getting backspin on your wedges, it's most likely, now you could be doing too much forward shaft lean. It's not real likely that you are, because even if you are, you're still presenting with quite a bit of loft. But it's possible, but it's not real likely. I don't see too many people getting too much forward shaft lean. But basically, if you're not getting backspin on your wedges, it's because your contact's not very good. If there's any sort or your face is dirty or something like that, basically you need very clean interaction between your face and the golf ball. So if you have a bunch of dirt on your face, your grooves are filled with dirt, your face is just caked, with dirt, you're not going to get any spin on those shots, because basically the grooves are already filled up. So there's nothing that can get in there to disperse from the face. And the ball is just going to slip on the face, and you're not going to get any spin. You're not going to get that friction. So what you want is nice, clean grooves. Get those grooves nice and clean, and ball first contact. That's really important. If you hit any of the grass before the ball, there's going to get moisture that gets on the face, and then there's going to be grass that gets on the face between the golf ball and the face, and that's going to cause the ball to slip, and you're not going to get as much spin. So you'll absolutely get backspin because of the loft. And if you're not getting backspin, it's most likely because your contact isn't very good. So make sure that you're getting ball first contact. One way that you can kind of tell is so if you take a tee, I actually have a tee in my pocket. You can take a tee and go out to the range. And if you're playing on real turf, what you can do is take the tee and scratch, take it and scratch a line in the turf, and then set the balls on the line and hit some wedge shots and see where you're hitting the ball in relationship to that line. And, if you see your ball coming out and you're seeing, okay, you're not getting the, what you're looking for there, then, you're not getting that contact there. Most likely that's why you're not getting the spin that you're looking for. One way, if you're on a mat, what you can do is you can take a thin towel and put it about 3 inches behind the golf ball. And if you're hitting that towel, that means that you're hitting the ground before the ball, right? So you need to be missing that towel, making good contact with the golf ball. So those are a couple of ways that you can kind of see where your ground contact is. So Guy C says, I'm confused when viewing short versus long distance wedges and club face position after impact. I'm not sure what the confusion is. Just follow up on the wedge club face. Should I release closed for roll out of ball and only release open when I want more spin to stop the ball? So what we talked about earlier was, the spin is going to come from the contact, the clean contact on the face and the loft with the club. So if you're trying to hit a higher trajectory shot, you may want to release a little bit more, a little bit less forward shaft lean. So that's actually a great exercise to go out and do, is to try to hit, high, medium, and low trajectory wedge shots and kind of see how the ball comes out, see how the ball reacts on the green. So a lot of times, if you get a high trajectory shot, a lot of times you'll have to hit a little bit of grass before the golf ball. So you'll get a higher trajectory, which will have a steeper angle of descent into the green. So it may have a decent amount of stopping power from there. And then the lower ones are going to have a flatter angle of a descent, but they'll typically have more backspin because you're going to be able to get more ball first contact a little bit more easily. So that's what I'd recommend doing, is just kind of going out and focusing on, getting that high, medium, and low trajectory shot. So a high trajectory shot would be, maybe a little bit open face, ball more in the middle of my stance, and I'm going to let this club kind of release a little bit. I'm going to let the club kind of release, basically, have a little bit of forward shaft lean, but not a lot of forward shaft lean, a little bit of forward shaft lean. You want to always have the handle leading the club head, even if you are hitting it high, because if you're like this, your contact's going to be very poor typically. So you want to have some of that stability, but playing the ball a little bit further up in your stance or more in the middle of your stance, and then having a little bit of an open face will allow you to have a higher trajectory shot. So you kind of see how that reacts. A normal trajectory shot would be maybe the ball a little bit back of middle. The hands will be a little bit more forward, face square, and you're just kind of pivoting through. So that would look something like this at contact, right? That'd be a kind of a medium trajectory shot. A low one would maybe be the ball a little bit more back in the stance and pivoting, really, really trying to open up and get low and getting the hands really low and driving it really, really low to get that low trajectory kind of shot. So I can play around with that and see how it goes. But as far as post-impact is concerned, I wouldn't worry about post-impact. Worry about the face at impact. That's the most important thing. Impact is the most important thing. It doesn't matter that much where the face is after impact. It only matters at impact. So focus on that. That's really what matters the most. There's some players that roll the face a little bit more through contact. There's some players that kind of keep the face, kind of square through contact, but they're still in the same position at impact. So worry about the impact position. Don't worry about the after impact position as far as the face orientation goes. You'll be much more successful if you do that, for sure. All right. So Drew D says, I have trouble sensing when to release my lag by rolling the forearm. Sometimes I'm late and I hit a slice. Other times I'm early and hit a pull. My downswing, I try to pull with my left arm and square up with my right hand. Any advice? So if you're hitting slices and pulls, that's not because of how you're releasing your lag. That's because you are swinging over the top. That's why you're hitting, because basically the ball's going to start mostly in the direction of the club face, and that's going to curve away from the club path. The closer the face and the path are together, the less curvature you're going to have. And the further they are apart, the more curvature you're going to have. So if you're swinging to the left with an open face, that's a slice, right? And if you swing to the left with a closed face, that's a pull, right? So that's what's happening in your swing. You can see that the common denominator there is this, a left path. So you need to get your path more from the inside, so that way you can hit much straighter shots. So I'd recommend working on, we talked about the move earlier, and we also talked about, or one other place you can go is the Never Slice Again course. So either one of those are going to be good for you to get this path, get this club shot out, get this path more into out with a closed face. So the move or the Never Slice Again course. So get to either one of those courses, select the house icon. That'll take you to the homepage. Scroll down the homepage. You'll see a list of all the courses. Select the appropriate courses, whichever one you want to work on. Either one's going to be a good one for sure. All right, so Hanf P says, I have heard Clay say, open your hips in the downswing. I tend to start my downswing with my arms first, then shoulders. Please advise a drill to start downswing from ground up, hips opening 45 degrees at impact. So that's going to be the straight line release course. That's what I'd be working through. But I would make sure the other pieces of the system are in place too, because there's a reason why the straight line release is the last piece of the top speed golf system, because it is the most difficult. So you need to have the other pieces in order before you go there. So look at your swing, Hanf, and see, okay, are my spine angles good? Am I angled the way I address? Am I staying angled away at the top? Am I staying nice and centered and angled away at the top? And am I getting more angled away as I'm coming into impact? There's a little bit of the hips opening and things like that in the straight line release course when you get into level 3. The stable fluid spine course. So make sure that your stable fluid spine is good. Make sure that your power turn is good. The power turn, it's not directly related to that, but it's low hanging fruit. It's really the easiest piece of the top speed golf system. That in the stable fluid spine, I would say. But it's really the thing that's going to help your game probably the most, and it's the easiest thing. So make sure you are getting a good shoulder turn. If you're not, you are leaving yards out on the table. And as we've seen, we're seeing a lot more proof of this nowadays. We're seeing Bryson DeChambeau dominate. We're seeing Dustin Johnson dominate. Rory McIlroy. These long hitters, they're dominating the tour. It's not because they are fantastic putters. They're definitely above average putters. They're good putters, but there's a lot of great putters in the PGA Tour. The reason why they're dominating is because they are long. They are long hitters. So they get a good shoulder turn. If you don't get a good shoulder turn, then it's going to be hard for you to compete. It really just is. You're going to be at a disadvantage to anybody who hits it longer than you. So it's just so much easier to play when you hit it long enough. So make sure that you have a good shoulder turn. Do not skip over that. That's really, really important. Lag is also a good thing for speed. You want to be able to get speed. You're not going to be able to open up your body at impact if you are not getting at least some lag. If you're starting to cast the club from the very beginning, it's basically going to be impossible for you to open up your body at impact. So make sure that you are getting some lag in the start of the downswing. Compression line. This is also where we work a little bit on getting the body to open up. So I'd make sure your compression line is good. If you're bumping your hips out like this, you can't open up your body. You're going to tend to, if you start your swing like this, you're going to throw your arms at the golf ball from there. So make sure that your compression line is good. So make sure those pieces are good. Don't skip over those pieces, because this is a common mistake that I see people make, is that they'll look at their swing, and the thing that stands out to them the most is the early release and all that stuff. And it's very understandable why it would do that. But a lot of the reasons why you're having that early release is because you're not doing the other pieces of the top speed golf system that are very, very important. So make sure that you're nailing those other pieces, because it's just going to be so much. You're going to have a super hard time in the straight line release course if you're not nailing the other pieces. it's just going to be really, really difficult or near impossible to be able to get into the positions if you're not nailing the stable fluid spine first, or all the other pieces first. So Mark S says, hey Q, chipping sucks. Been practicing chipping drills with no improvement. None. I think I'm worse. I had a left hip issue and doing all this chipping is bothering it. Help. So inconsistent. Chuck 1-3, blade 1-3. The other 1 out of 3 has no feel. So I feel like I'm not building a reference on how hard to swing at the ball. So I'd recommend working through our chipping mastery course. Make sure that you're in there and set up with it. If people who are struggling with chunks and blades typically are playing the ball too far back in their stance and they use too much arms in the swing. So you need to use your pivot. You need to pivot. So what I would try to feel like, get your body pre-opened up a little bit, and I play the ball, for a chip. If you're hitting a chip, I'd play the ball in the middle or a little bit back of middle, right in that area. When I see people struggle with chunking and blading, they typically play the ball too far back and they chop down on the golf ball. They're all arms. They don't pivot. They just use all arms and they chop down into the golf ball. It's going to be very, very hard to be consistent when you do that, right? And a lot of times you're going to decelerate, and that might be why you have issues with controlling your speed. So get your body pre-opened. So if I'm going straight this way, I'm going to have my feet opened a little bit. The reason why I do that is it just makes it easier to pivot, right? I'm going to have a much easier time getting my body to open up when I come in here. It's a chip shot. We don't need to get a full shoulder turn and all that. So we can pre-open our body and then just kind of swing along kind of our side here to get in a good position. So that's number one. Set up pre-open. And that may ease up some pressure on your hip that you talked about. I believe it was your hip that you talked about, to make that a little bit easier. Next, I play the ball middle-ish of the stance, maybe a hair back in the stance, but definitely not off my back foot. You can see here, if I'm opened up, this is basically in the middle of my stance here. So that's the next piece. And then what we want to feel like is that we are pivoting, right? So I'm pivoting. I'm using my hips. I'm not just using my arms like this. I'm pivoting. I'm feeling my hips kind of in my knees kind of move and pivot back and forth. That's how you control this very, very easily. You can see here, I'm just pivoting back and forth. And I'm able to brush the turf in the same spot every time. If I have this ball back here and I use all arms, I tell you what, I'm going to have a hard time hitting the ground in the same spot every time. And I have to be very precise if I do that because I'm chopping down into the golf ball. Whereas if I get the ball more in front, I set up my body pre-opened and I get my weight a little bit forward and I just pivot back and through. You can see I can hit the ground come in very shallow and hit the ground basically in the same spot every single time. That's how you're able to be consistent. And even if I hit the ground an inch behind the golf ball, I'm coming in so shallow with my pivot that it's okay. It's still going to end up fine. If I hit it a little bit thin, it's still going to be fine. All right. So that's in the chipping mastery course where we work on that. The only thing Clay doesn't really do in there is he doesn't tell you to pre-open the body. That's about it. That's just something that I think helps most people. It helps me a lot. Because if you set up, that doesn't mean you can't set up square if that's what you prefer. But it's just you're typically going to be more armsy if you do that. To me, it's easier to pre-open the body, and then that makes it a lot easier to feel the pivot that you need to have. And also kind of helps me see the line and everything a little bit better too. But mostly just work through that chipping mastery course. Go to the house icon, select that, and then go to the home page and go to the chipping mastery course. So Ali S says, thanks a lot for demonstrating how to hinge wrist and bow to move the club upward during backswing. You demonstrate the club in line with your belt buckle, straight line. How do you adjust for shaft lean? Will it point to right belt buckle? So basically your rotations, what's going to get you your forward shaft lean. So I think you're talking about what I talked about yesterday to help you kind of get into. Basically, I broke down, for those of you who weren't here yesterday, I broke down the pieces of the backswing. Basically, I think someone asked how to get the club to the top, like how to rotate and things like that. So I broke it down into components that I find makes it very easy. So just to kind of go over what those components would be. So address position, right? Normal address position. And then from here, you hinge the club up 90 degrees. So address position, hinge the club up 90 degrees. So from here, I'm actually going to turn the handle like this. That's allowing me to square up the face at impact. Because if I'm going to have some forward shaft lean at impact, I need to basically close the face from my address position. So if you see here, I'm right here. If I lean this shaft forward, well, now I have my face open. So I have to turn that handle down. So that's what that piece is. So hinge it up 90 degrees, then turn the handle. So that's the lead wrist is getting flat or slightly bowed, and then the trail wrist is in a bent back position. From here, I'm raising this club up over my right shoulder, right? Raising the club up over my right shoulder. So from this angle, you can see here, golf posture, hinge up, twist the handle up over my right shoulder. From here, I'm staying in my golf posture, and I'm rotating my hips 45 degrees and my shoulders 45 degrees. And you can see now I'm in a great top of the backswing position. From here, where I come down to impact is I would get this club shallowing out nicely, and I would come into contact like this. And now you can see I have forward shaft lean and a square club face. If I didn't do this piece, right, I would have to come into contact like this at impact to have the face square. So push the handle forward, turn the handle to square it up. That's basically what we're trying to do with the move, is get that face basically closed so you can come into contact with a square club face and forward shaft lean. So you can, if you really want to go up here and then go like that, that's completely fine. But really it's your body opening up that gets you into this position. It's still, since I'm right here, the club it's in the same position in relation to my hips. If I rotate my body this way and then get to my impact position, you can see my hands are directly in front of my belt buckle, essentially, just like they were right here, right? It's just that my body is opened up and now I got my hands more forward. Hopefully that makes sense. So Louis V says, good morning. Should you always use the driver for the 20-minute distance fix? You don't have to. But I just recommend you do. One, it's way more fun to hit your driver as hard as you can. It's not going to be as much fun to hit your 7-iron as hard as you can. You can use your 7-iron. I would just recommend, some people, might be doing this indoors. Maybe they have lower ceilings and they can't hit a driver indoors, with the low ceilings. So maybe all they can use is like an 8-iron or something like that. So yeah, you can see the speeds go up the same way. I would recommend doing it with the driver. One thing to keep in mind, though, is as your driver speed goes up, all your other clubs are going to go up too. So it's not like your driver's going to go up and then everything else is going to stay the same unless you train those too. No, your driver speed goes up, everything goes up along with it. So I wouldn't be worried about trying to get the speed with all the clubs, because as it goes up with the driver, it will go up with the other clubs as well. All right, so Gary L says, hi, Q. I'm going to play this Thursday for the first time in 6 weeks. I've been in physical therapy for left hip bursitis plus pulled right hamstring. Feel good on driving range, but the gain I got, and then it from hard work on the first 2 lessons in your Part 5 series are paying the price for lack of practice. Any advice on how to start out in the first round? My best advice would be to just go out and have fun. To be honest, I don't have low expectations. Go out, have a good time. That would be my best recommendation. There's nothing I'm going to tell you that's going to go out and make you shoot lights out. That's unfortunately there's going to be some rust there. Expect it, and just go out there and have a good time. That's what I'd recommend doing. So Victor M says, for some reason, I continue to hit the ball left yesterday, and this has been a problem for me in the past, all clubs. So assuming you're right-handed, if you are pulling the ball left, so let's say you're pulling it, it's because you are most likely swinging over the top with a closed club face. So I would recommend working on the Never Slice Again course or the Move course. That's going to help you to get the ball starting out to the right and curving to the left, help you to start hitting draws. So that's what I'd recommend doing. Get the ball to start to the right, curve to the left. Basically, the easiest way to fix any issue is to exaggerate the opposite. So if you're pulling the ball, swinging left with a closed face, then swing right with an open face. And what will likely happen, this is the fault, feel, real approach. So your fault right now is over the top pull, right? Over the top closed face. The feel you need to have is too much into out open face. And the real will hopefully be on plane square face. If you overdo it and you block it out to the right too much, then just ease off of it a little bit. But that's what I'd recommend doing. That's kind of like a quick fix, but to get to where you get rid of that completely and it never kind of comes back, work through Never Slice Again, work through the Move. These are both courses included with your membership. Do the drills, and you should be in much better shape. So Graham C says, can you clarify the dip in the weight shift and of ground contact indoor work along? It has been causing me to lose height with thick and thin shots. I'm not sure exactly what you're referring to, but if you're talking about the kind of the dropping into the ground and at the start of the downswing, that's basically, often referred to as the seat sneed squat, the tiger squat. Basically what we're doing is we're going up to the top, and as we're going up to the top, we're kind of falling to our lead side, or we're falling to our lead side. And what that does, this flexing, getting into the ground, it gets you to your lead side, but it also allows you to use your legs to open up your body and to be able to get into a good impact position. So it's hard to say exactly what you're doing without seeing your swing, but what you don't want to be doing is you don't want to be just dipping down and then standing up like this. You want to get down into the ground and then rotate your body. You need to push the body, the hips out of the way, so that way you can get into a position like this. If you're doing this move like this and then just standing up and doing that, that's most likely where those are coming from. So get to the lead side, and as soon as you get here, push the hip back and out of the way, so that way you can get in a good impact position. So James P says, good morning to you. I'm having trouble understanding exactly how the arms work in the downswing. Should I be focusing on letting my arms drop and getting my trail elbow to my side? I mean, those are both, feel is really relative. So what you may feel and what the reality are two different things. Basically, what I'd be looking at is your elbow plane. So if you get the camera angle, this is really important to get the camera angle right when you're filming your swing, to see kind of if your arms are coming down in the correct spot. So if you are standing here, you get an alignment stick, all right? Get an alignment stick, place it down at a target, and then take the camera and set the camera up to where it's shooting right down the alignment stick, all right? And then when you go up to set up to the ball, have your hands directly above that alignment stick. So that way, if you drop something from your hands, it would land right on top of it. And then you want to be about waist level and not too close. You want to be able to see you and the club stay in the frame throughout the entire video. So again, alignment stick on the ground, line up the camera with it, set up to it. It's going to be about waist level. Set up to the alignment stick with your hands directly above the stick, and have the camera far away enough to where you and the club never leave the frame. So this camera angle right here, it's actually not the one that you want. This is too high. Excuse me. This is like, I have the camera probably 7 feet up in the air, 6 feet up in the air. And it's too close too. The club, when I get it up here, my club kind of leaves the frame. It's not, you really just don't want to be too close. If your club goes out of frame a little bit, that's okay. But if the camera's too close, the perspective will be a little bit off. So it's just best to err on the side of being a little bit too far away. So now, once you get that, video your swing, use an app like V1 Golf. V is in Victor, V1 Golf. That's what we use here at Top Speed Golf. It's a free app for Android or Apple. It's called V1 Golf. It's a red icon. It is free. It does have, you can pay for something within it, but just to video your swing and draw lines on it, you do not need to pay for it. You just need like the basic part of the app. But you can pay for stuff like pro swing models and extra drawing tools and stuff like that. You don't need that to video your swing and draw lines. So it can be completely free. So what you're going to do is you're going to draw a line from the hosel of the club up through the point of your elbow here. Now, when you bring this club up to the top, in reference to that line, you want the hands to be getting by the time your hands get to where the lead arm is about parallel to the ground, you want the hands to be either on that line or slightly above it going toward that line. By the time you get to about waist level, you want the hands to be on that line, right? And then when you get to impact, you want the hands to be basically on that line, right? So you want the hands to eventually be working onto that line by the time the hands get to club level or to waist level. So if you see your hands kind of working out above that line, you're going to need to feel like this probably. You're probably going to need to feel like the hands are dropping way behind you. If your swing looks like this, and you have the hands dropping way behind you like this, then you may need to feel like the hands are going way over top of that line. But that's going to help you to get the hands in a good spot. Now, the hands are important, but what's more important is where the club is. So it doesn't do you a lot of good to have the hands coming down perfectly in a good spot, on that elbow plane line, but have the club like this, because that's going to make you bring your hands out away from your body to get the club back on plane. Otherwise, you're just going to come over the top, which isn't going to be good either. So what we need is that club to also be getting on that line as well. So what I like to see by the time by the time the arm gets the lead arm parallel, I like to see that club to be a little bit shallower to that line or right on it. By the time you get here, I want to see that club on that plane or shallower to it, right? If you're way underneath, that's typically going to be too much into out. You're going to have to make some compensations later. If you're like this, right, or too steep, if you're more like this, right, that's typically going to lead to some issues later in the swing. So you want to get the hands working kind of in that better position in the downswing. So if you want to work on that, I would recommend the move. The move course is to help you get that club shallowing out, face squaring earlier. That's going to get you in a much, much better position. But look at what the hands are doing. It doesn't do you a lot of good to get the hands way out here and have the club shallow, because then you're going to have to do something. You're in the downswing. You're most likely going to stand up and flip. So get the hands on that elbow plane, get the club shallower to that elbow plane, slightly shallower to it or on it. And by the time you get to in this area in the swing, you'll be in good shape. Adjust your feel to get the desired result. If your hands are way out here, then feel like they're way back here. If your hands are way back here, then feel like they're way out here. If the club is like this, feel like it's like this. If the club is like this, then feel like it's like that. You need to adjust your feel to get the desired result. Feel is really relative. And what we know is that feel is not real. So if you can tell you what, to get good at golf, it's really about adjusting your feel to get the desired result that you want, getting out of your comfort zone. If you can do that, then you can be really good and change a lot of things for the better in your swing. So I apologize if I mispronounced your name. Okay, it says Oya. So Oya O says, I compress my irons well. This has over the years affected my driver shots. I hit down on my driver and cannot correct the upswing required for driver shots. I tried moving ball position to my left toe, which again produces a fade, which reduces distance in fairway. Is there a sure way to nail a ball position on driving to ensure upswing? Yeah, your spine angle would most likely be what you need to do. A little bit wider stance, ball forward, and spine angle staying angled away to allow this club to work up into the golf ball. If you are going like this, right, and coming over the top and hitting down into the golf ball, you're going to have trouble with the driver for sure. So you need to be angled away, allowing this club to work into the ball. A good kind of feeling to have is, if I grab the club here, if you take your driver and kind of put it out in front of you like this, right? So I want you to kind of put it out in front of you like this, get your body angled away, and I want you to kind of feel like this kind of action. So you're kind of coming in, feel like you're opening your body, you're staying behind the driver here on the ground. This is helping you to kind of get the feeling of your right shoulder kind of working in as you're coming down. So if you look at it from this angle, if I have it up like this, I'm in my normal golf posture, I'm feeling that what I need to be feeling like as I'm coming into the golf ball. What you're likely doing would be something like this, you know, where I'm bringing my shoulder down and I'm chopping down into the golf ball. So stay behind it and work in like this. That's going to allow you to get that upward angle of attack on the golf ball. If you're like this, that's going to be downward. We want to be angled away. Stay behind it, get a little bit wider and stay behind it to allow yourself to hit up into it. So Johan K says, morning Q. I have a severe overswing problem. When I look at my swing videos, I see my right arm separate from my body and opening up during my backswing. When I do practice swings, while focusing on bringing my right arm closer to my body, the swing angle is reduced to normal, but I keep opening up my body in my actual swing. Any advice to help me close my arm closer to my body? I'd recommend going really slow. Get it in if you can't do it slow, then you can't do it fast. So go really, really slow. Do it with a pause at first. So I would just go up to the top, you know, where you want to be, you know, and I would pause, right? And then I would swing down and through and get comfortable from there. And then I would start trying to reduce that pause. Once I get comfortable with that, then I'm getting to where I'm doing a much shorter pause at the top. And then I'm continuing, I'm going nice and slow, shorter pause, nice and slow, shorter pause until I can take the pause. I'm doing it nice and fluid, but nice and slow. Once I start getting comfortable with that, I start adding speed. So the way you don't want to do it is to do it in a practice swing, right, where it looks great, and then go straight to the golf ball. You're not ready yet. You got to progress to get there. So get to where you can do it with a pause, slow, then build up the speed, build up the speed, build up the speed, add the golf ball, start slow, build up the speed, get the reps in, and that would be my best advice, to go out and try to do it. So Drew D says, hi Q, I heard your response re-releasing the lag, and you are probably right, but isn't it possible I could be holding the angle too long and the face would be open or closed at impact depending on where my club face is on the arc in my swing? Yes, it is possible, but very, very highly unlikely. Super highly unlikely. I see, I will tell you, I've seen thousands of golf swings, and I'm trying to think if I've ever even seen anyone hold on to the lag too long. It's dang near impossible to do. So I would say that that's very highly unlikely that is what you're doing. So I would say it's possible, but highly unlikely. So Dave H says, hey Q, at what point should we start rotating the club face closed, the top, waist high, somewhere else? Really, it needs to be happening in the start of the downswing, but it can be happening in the backswing as well. So if you look at like a Dustin Johnson, as he's bringing this club up to the top, he's closing this club face. He's getting it like this at the top, and then he's coming down and it's already, basically closed. But if you do it that way, you have to make sure that you're also doing it in the downswing. You can't be like this. This is what I often see. I've had a few students that have been trying to, do the DJ move and stuff like that, and they get here at the top, and then at the start of the downswing, they go like that, right? And they just undo it completely. So no matter what, we need to be doing this in the start of the downswing, no matter what. That's when it's got to be happening. Otherwise, if you get to where it's down here, it's too late, basically, and you're going to be making a compensation, most likely flipping in the downswing. So it needs to be happening here, whether you're nice flat wrist or even cupped wrist at the top, flat, slightly bowed, wherever it is, that needs to be happening in the start of the downswing. That's where it's most important for it to be happening. It can be happening earlier in the swing, but it also has to be happening in the start of the downswing. You have to keep it there. So James P says, does the move happen when the club is parallel in the downswing? Earlier, later, was doing the knuckle dragger drill. So it's happening at the very start of the downswing. So that's basically in the transition. As you get here, that's when you want to start doing the move. When you start coming down the very, very beginning of the downswing in that transition, that's the best time. Well, the club needs to be shallowing at that time. Like I said, you can be squaring the face earlier in the swing, but you still have to be keeping that here in this part of the swing. You can't square it earlier in the swing and then undo it right here. You got to get it squaring at this part of the swing too. So Mark S says, thanks for chipping advice. I want to respond to your comments. I've watched Chipping Mastery course 17 times. Clay makes it look easy as you do. I do start with the open position like you mentioned, makes the feel like I can see the line. I used to have the ball just in front of the right toe, but after watching Clay mention club bottoms out near left armpit, so I moved approximately the center. Yeah, so center, slightly farther back. A way that you can kind of see where you should be is just to get out by some turf, basically. Get near some turf, get in your position, just put the club down and just kind of go back and forth and kind of see where you're coming down and hitting the ground, right? So I can kind of see in my carpet here that I'm hitting the ground right there, right? So that's where my golf ball should be, maybe just a hair in front of that. That's about it. That's going to allow me to make consistently ball first. That one's a little bit further back, but you can kind of see I'm hitting the ground right here. So if I'm hitting the ground right there, I'd want to put the golf ball about right there. That's going to give me a good opportunity to get ball first contact. And you can see that's basically in the center of my stance, maybe a hair back of the center of my stance, but that's what's going to put you in a good position. You know, it's not easy. I know it's not easy to look at a course, because we all make it look easy. Clay makes it look easy and simple and all those things. If you're really having trouble and you can't get there, I'd recommend getting a personalized lesson from an in-person lesson. That way they can go hands-on with you. That might be, because it's one thing to watch something and maybe we're telling you all the concepts, but it's hard for you to go out and put it into practice. Or maybe you don't quite understand exactly what we're telling you or things like that. So, if you tried everything, you really haven't tried everything, in reality, right? So what you need to do is most likely, if it's really that bad, I would recommend getting, an in-person lesson and getting it to where it's worked out. And it may just be something that you got to build up your skill with. But if you're doing what I'm telling you, it's actually pretty easy. It's just a matter of actually you doing it, right? I can make it sound easy. I can just tell you, hey, just pivot. But to you, what pivoting is to me may not feel the same, or you may not understand the concept of what that is. And basically, what I'm saying by pivoting is I'm saying my hips are going. So I'm not really using my arms. My arms aren't really separating from my body, right? I'm not really using my arms at all. And that's what I see a lot of people do struggle with chipping, is they really use their arms and their wrists a lot, right? So it's really, I'm moving my body. I'm pivoting my body. My hips are pivoting, right? So I'm doing this and my arms are swinging from there. Like I'm not using my arms only to swing the club. I'm basically really just using my hips to pivot back and forth for these kinds of chips. The only time I would really use my wrists is if I needed to come in steeper, like if I was in the rough or something like that, I would use my wrists a lot more and hinge the club a little bit more. So if I was in the rough, I'd play the ball just a hair back of what I normally would, right? So let's say I was in the rough and I didn't have a very good lie. I had to kind of get down there and get the ball. I play the ball a little bit back in my stance. I would still use the pivot, but I would hinge my wrist up a little bit, ball a little bit back in the stance. I would still use my pivot, and I'd actually probably get my weight more forward. And all this is doing is helping me come down a little bit more steeply into the golf ball. But because if you use your arms only and your wrists only, it's going to be really, really difficult to control your low point. And that's really what chipping is all about, is controlling the low point. Once you can control your low point, your contact is consistent, and then your distance control is going to come. It's just going to take some practice. But if your contact is super inconsistent, then you don't have any idea how hard to hit it, because sometimes you thin it really bad, sometimes you blade it, sometimes you chunk it, and it's just not going to end up as a good result. So you need to get this pivot down, and that's why I'm saying it's really, I'm feeling like my hips are basically like a merry-go-round, right? I have my weight forward, and I'm feeling like my hips are just like a merry-go-round, kind of pivoting back and forth. And doing that allows me to get the club to hit the ground in the same spot basically every single time. So that's what I'd be trying to feel like, is that your hips are like a merry-go-round. You're controlling that low point. Let that club come in really shallow. If you get in the rough, then it's just ball a little bit further back in the stance. You're doing the same kind of pivot, but you're hinging the wrist, right? You're hinging the wrist more and hitting down on more, weight more forward. That's the only difference. So that way, the ball is going to come out lower and hotter too when you do that, and it's going to be a little bit harder to control. But hey, it's the rough. That's what's going to happen. But when you're in the fairway, you can come in nice and shallow, brush the turf, get that nice click sound on there. So that's really what it comes down to. Get your weight forward, get a good pivot going, right? Get that feeling of the pivot, and let your arms kind of swing around that pivot. And once you get that sense and that feeling, it's not easy. If you're someone who's always used their arms, it's hard to feel like you're not using your arms at all. That may be what you need to feel like. You may need to feel like, because I imagine that's what you're doing. Based on what I've seen with students who really struggle with what you're talking about, blading, chunking, poor distance control, and that's most likely because of poor contact. It's because they keep everything pretty much locked up, and then they try to use their arms only, and that's going to lead to disaster. So we need to get the pivot, so that way we can get our hands leading. We can get our hands leading in front. We can get our low point control, right? Keep our weight forward, low point control, and you're going to be a lot more consistent if you do that. So Keith Wise says, how do you stop pulling irons? Swing to the right with an open face. So if you're a right-handed golfer, we talked about this earlier, but if you're a right-handed golfer, this is the fault feel reel approach. So the fault is over the top, closed face. That's what causes a pull. You need to feel like you're swinging them way into out with an open face. That's what I would try to feel like. Get to where you're hitting a bunch of blocks out to the right, and then ease off of it. So if you feel like you're doing this, right, blocking it way out to the right, open face, the reality is that you'll probably be more like this. It'll be probably closer to straight. So try to hit a block out to the right, and you will more than likely get rid of those pulls. Marquez says, my left hip issue comes from putting 60% weight on the left, as suggested by Clay. I feel like my elbows don't stay extended. Once I can take a backswing to 9 o'clock, no problem. But the 7 or 8 o'clock backswing, I have no control of the club head as I try to accelerate and lose all control. Mark, I just recommend getting a lesson, buddy. It's hard for me to know what's going on without seeing your swing. But I would just recommend getting a lesson. Somebody get a pro to look at what's going on and to help you. So Caroline Elm says, my iron distances are almost right on average for female recreational golfers, but my driver and fairway clubs are about 30 yards shorter. What could be the cause? It's either, it's probably not your speed if it's probably not your speed if your irons are the right distance. It's probably because of the contact. So I would look at your swing on video, see if you're swinging over the top too much from the inside. I would see where you're striking. Use some foot powder spray. See where you strike it on the club face. You could be hitting it really high or on the toe or something like that, and that's taking a lot of distance out of it. So I'd look and see where you're striking it on the club face, because basically it comes down to speed. You're not transferring as much energy into the golf ball for some reason. And that energy that you're able to transfer into the golf ball comes from having the face square, having the path on plane. You could be hitting down on the golf ball a lot. which is taking compression out of it, taking energy. Whereas if you imagine you were hitting the ball like a sledgehammer straight into the golf ball, that would be transferring more energy. It could be for some reason your speed isn't translating with the driver. Sometimes that happens. So I'd be looking at those pieces, what's going on there. It's impossible for me to know, but something's off there, right? Something's not translating from your irons to your driver. So my guess is it's strike location. That'd be my guess. So if you get some foot powder spray, spray it on the club face. You can see where you're striking on the face. And usually people have a tendency. Usually people, it's always on the toe or always on the heel. And if that's the case, then really try to exaggerate the opposite. So let's say you're hitting everything off the heel, which is a distance killer for sure. If you're hitting everything off the heel, then try to hit all your drives off the toe, and that will more than likely move that strike closer to the center of the face. And keep doing that until you actually start hitting it off the toe. But I would look at those variables there and see what's going on. All right. So Johan K says, thanks for the advice. I have one more question. I'm planning to buy new clubs, but I'm a bit concerned that the higher level of forgiveness might mess up my swing. Can using a club with higher level of forgiveness mess up your swing? No, it's not going to mess up your swing. Since it leaves more room for error? No, you'll be good. So Mark S says, you got it. I can't rub the carpet like you're doing. Bottom is all over the place. So yeah, keep, it might be, you mentioned you can't put weight on your left side. So I would try to get to where you feel comfortable, right? Where you feel comfortable, and see where you're hitting the ground there, and then put the golf ball down there. That's what I recommend doing, because it might be that you're trying to get your weight forward like you should be, but maybe you're not physically capable of doing that. So you're fighting it and you're wanting to kind of hang back. So get to where you're comfortable, even if that means having your weight on your back foot. Get to where you're comfortable and see from there where you're hitting the ground, and then put the golf ball right there. So Roman F says, at what point in the downswing should your left leg start to straighten? It'll be about when your lead arm gets parallel to the ground. So when your lead arm gets parallel to the ground in the downswing. So if I'm going up here, I'm starting my downswing, I'm getting flex in my lead leg. And then from here, I'm starting to push into the ground and straighten out my leg. Now, my leg is not going to be really straight until the straight line release or after. So we don't want to be coming into impact with a straight leg, because that's typically going to lead to early extension. So we're pivoting. We're at impact. You're going to have some flex on that lead leg. Usually in the straight line release, it's going to be straightening, but it's not going to be straight. And then after that straight line release is typically when you'll see that leg starting to completely straighten out. All right, so one more question here, and then we'll wrap it up for today. So Larry J says, I finally got my hips to not bump forward, and I stayed down on the ball with hips going through and some shaft lean. However, I couldn't stop hitting the hosel no matter where I placed the ball in my stance, wrong camera angle to tell if it's a swing angle problem. So what I'd recommend doing is just try to hit it off the toe. I wouldn't try to put it in different places in the stance. Just put it in the normal spot and try to hit it off the toe as much as you possibly can. Basically, shanks are from typically, as far as swing issues are concerned, it could be you're standing too close to the golf ball, but that's not usually the case. I usually only see that when chipping. People have the issues with chipping. But typically, when I see people that struggle with the hosel shots, it's because their hips are moving toward the golf ball. But if your hips are opening up, that may not be the case. So that's what I look at. But if your hips aren't moving toward the golf ball, the other reason could be if the club's working too much from the inside. That could be part of the issue as well. So you may want to feel like you're coming a little bit more over the top. But again, that may not be the issue. The reason why the club coming from the inside might cause that is because when the club's coming from the inside, the heel is kind of moving toward the golf ball. Whereas if it's coming down more on plane, the center of the face is moving toward the golf ball. So I would look at that. But if it's really none of those things, it's just adjusting your feel to get the desired result that you want. So if you're hitting the ball off the hosel, even the shots that you're not hitting off the hosel, you're probably hitting off the heel. I try to hit it off the toe as much as you possibly can. Set up to the ball as you normally would, and then try to hit the ball off the toe. One thing that you can do as well is if you have a ball, if you're on the range, put a ball right next to the ball you're trying to hit. So I'd set up to this one here. I'd set up to this one right here. And I would be trying to hit this one. Subconsciously, your brain is going to try to avoid hitting this ball. So I would try to hit this ball off the toe, and having this constraint there can help you to do that. So I would try to do that, get to where you can do that, remove this ball, and then try to do the same thing. Try to get it off the toe and keep trying to hit it off the toe until you actually start hitting it off the toe consistently. And then you can start to ease off of it a little bit. So, all right. Thanks, everybody, for joining me today. We'll be back tomorrow, 11 a.m. Eastern time. Everybody have a good rest of your day, and we'll talk to y'all next time.